What's up, guys? This is Kyle with Build 3 Pass. Today I'm bringing you another video. Something a little different. I did a tier list way back when over the standard characters, and today I'm going to bring what, in my opinion, our meta is going to initially look like post Crimson Rampage for the first couple of events. And without further ado, let's get going. Just a reminder, all of these are just opinions, right? None of this is obviously set in stone. And actually, before we jump into it, I just want to define what my tiers are, right? Because there's no point in going through this unless you understand how I'm rating my characters, right? So F tier are going to be characters that just don't function or are so bad because of either a matchup or something mechanical within that character that they're just kind of unplayable on a competitive level, right? D tier characters are characters with some extreme flaws. They function and they can take games and they could kind of do well, but they're just going to be a lot more work than they're worth, in my opinion. C tier characters and up are going to be the characters that, in my opinion, you are probably going to see at regionals, right? C tier characters are characters that are good. They just require a lot of hard work and dedication from the player. B tier characters are good characters that just have one little flaw or some matchup that just really keeps them down, but otherwise just very strong characters. A tier characters are just mechanically perfect characters, right? These are top echelon characters that are all just very, very powerful with very few to no flaws, right? And then the S tier is going to be characters that are just above and beyond. Characters that should be on some sort of watch list. Not necessarily get banned, right? But they should be on a watch list in case they do get out of control, either because their power level is so good or because they're doing something mechanically that's breaking the game. All right? So without further ado, let's jump into this tier list. We're going to start off with the F tier. As you can see, I have 7 hand size present mic. 7... I apologize. Hold on a sec. Let me swap this around. Didn't think that through very well. All right. So 7 hand size present mic. I just don't think he's good. He's extremely squishy in a meta where throws are going to be everywhere. Being 17 health. Sure, he's 7 light. Sure, he's 7 hand size, but he doesn't really have that many or any anti-throw options, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe under his chaos symbol. I don't remember if the new Otraco has chaos. But, I mean, regardless, he's extremely squishy for the meta that we're going into, so that is a big strike against him. And then on top of that, I mean, he discards 4 cards from the top of the rival's deck and gives 1 damage for each attack discarded that way. While you're probably going to hit at least 1 attack, and milling 4 is okay, people are starting to play bigger decks anyway, and I don't think with how squishy he is, he's going to be able to mill the opponent out before they're able to kill him. Not in this meta, anyway. And then his once per game is good. The ability itself is really, really good, but I would have rather had him say, commit his face to do it or something, right? Being able to cancel an attack or action and discard it from the pool is very, very good. But once per game on this ability, when there's another character in the format that kind of does that already, right? Is just it really sucks for him, and all around, I just don't think he can get there. All right, I mean, prove me wrong, but I just don't think he can get there. So, Present Mike 2 is in the F tier. Now, moving on to Ingenium. Sadly, they went for flavor with this guy, as he has no legs. Ingenium, I do not think is very good at all. He gives EX or slam attacks 3 damage once per turn, and then once per turn, he can increase or decrease speed as a response. And then if it's your attack, each time your rival plays an enhance ability during the attack's enhanced step, you get to ready a foundation that has not been readied this combat phase. Yeah, those abilities are just really, really bad. Sure, plus 3 damage is fine, but it's once per turn, right? He's not really killing anybody with that ability. It's not really doing much for him, right? And it's very limited because it's limited to just EX and slam attacks, and I don't really feel like the cards he has access to are particularly amazing, right? And then his other ability is, I mean, again, increasing speed or decreasing speed is good, and readying foundations is good, but, I mean, there's just other characters that do what this guy wants to do better, right? And I just think he's going to be a bit too slow, and because he's going to be so slow, I just think he's in the F tier. So that's that. Froppy 2 Dot. Froppy 2 Dot is terrible. Honestly, she's just not very good. The only thing that I think could maybe bump her up to like D tier is the fact that there's a bunch of throws under her symbols, under water and under life. And because of that, she could be D tier because she boosts 4 damage on throws, but you got to bait the opponent you got to get the opponent to block you first, and it's or you have to stuff a card in the pool, which she can do. It's just I think she's a lot of work for not that much being given back, and for that reason, I put her in the F tier. True Form All Might. This guy is terrible, and he always has been terrible. I think he is just a bad character. I think he's very poorly designed. His flavor is okay, but I just think he's poorly designed. So he's a 7-hander with 30 life, which sounds broken until you realize every single turn he's going to burn himself for 3. It can't kill him, but he burns himself for 3. So after the first 2 turns, he's down to a somewhat normal 7-hander's life total. So on the first aggro turn, he's down to basically a normal life total for any other 7-hander. And what does he get in order to do that? Well, once per game, he can just become one of the other All Mights. My question is, why on earth wouldn't you just play one of the other All Mights that are better and be a good character all the time? He's just not good, and I don't think there's anything that they could possibly release that could make this All Might any good. So, there he is. Next up, I'm going to talk about these two together, Ectoplasm and Mount Lady. God, these two have great abilities. Their abilities are really, really good. Here's the problem with them. Until Jasko decides to release gauge attacks or give them actual support that is going to make it easier for them to stack themselves, or at least set up to stack themselves. The character stackers are going to be real tough to play. They're going to be real bad to play. I mean, you could maybe bump Mount Lady up, but Ectoplasm doesn't even have an ability to stack his own character, right? And it just makes it really hard to play these characters because they're so damn slow to set up. I mean, maybe you can make something work because Ectoplasm can search stuff from his discard pile. But, like, that's all he does. And there's other characters that basically already do that also have real abilities, right? And, like, maybe you can make it work because Mount Lady does boost a ton of damage. But, like, it's just so much setup for, again, not that much payout. If they had access to gauge attacks or some sort of really good foundational support that helped them set up, I think the characters would be worth playing. But for right now, I just don't think they function. They just don't function. So F tier, in my opinion. Moving on to the D tier. Midoriya 1 dot. Yes, I know he got some cool support, and yes, I know Tam did somewhat well with him at an event, but that doesn't change the fact that this character just isn't very good, right? His prediction ability is fine if you are good at predicting what the opponent's zones are going to be. You know, his prediction ability is actually pretty good, but his discard his hand for 10 damage Hail Mary thing, that's cute, but it's whatever, honestly. It's fine. You can kill people with it. You can. It's just I don't think it's that amazing, and I think it's a lot for what he's actually getting. And there are other characters that can basically do what he's doing without having to give up their whole hand to do it. And for those reasons, I put him in the D tier. You can do it with a lot of work. I mean, obviously, Tam topped with him, right? But I think it just gets harder for him in set 2 with more stuff out there that's just going to mess with him. So, there it is. All Might 1 dot. All Might 1 dot is tough. He could be C tier, honestly. He's really, really cool. The issue with him is if he just doesn't see what he needs to see, he can just, like, die. Right? And, like, he draws a lot of cards, but the issue is, eventually, if you don't see exactly what you need to see within the first couple of turns, he's going to have a real tough game in the mid to late game. So he just, like, sucks after the first couple turns, and that's really what I think his big problem is, because otherwise I think he's great. If he just needs some sort of support that allows him to, like, recuperate his hand size potentially or something, you know, or allows him to circumvent his problems with the mid game, and then I think he'd be fine. But for right now, I just don't think he has what he needs to thrive. So in the D tier he goes. Monoma is tough, because Monoma is actually really good in the sideboard against certain characters. Monoma is kind of mean in the sideboard, but as a main deck character, which is what this tier list is how they are as main deck characters, Monoma just isn't good. Monoma is only good in matchups when you can sit him across from that deck and be able to play their deck better than they can under the symbol that Monoma has, right? And so a lot of his games are just come straight down to the mercy of whatever the matchup happens to be, and I don't think that a character that's like that can thrive in the meta. And so for that, I think he's in the D tier. Ida is just a bad squishy Ida 2 is just a bad squishy version of Ida 3. Or of Ida 1. Ida 1 is a lot better. Sure, Ida 2 has the extra hand size, but, like, Ida 2 doesn't have access to, like, real anti-throw hate. I mean, he has some new cards, but not a ton, and I just don't really feel like his abilities are very impactful in comparison to the other Idas, and so in the D tier he is. Yuga Yuga is cool, and I think with the right support in the future, he could be really good. His problem is right now, he doesn't have the kit to support what he's doing, and he runs out of gas extremely quickly, right? If he didn't run out of gas so fast, I think he'd be fine. Like, he just needs kit that unflips stuff. But for right now, he doesn't have enough of that, so in the D tier he is. Moving on to the C tier. Nomu. I have always disliked Nomu. I think Nomu isn't a very strong character at all. I think people overvalue what he can be. He gets better, in my opinion, with Set 2. Because of some cards under his evil symbol. I actually think his evil symbol is somewhat playable. Here's the problem. All you have to do to beat Nomu is just block his stuff. Most of his attacks are extremely slow. And on top of that, he has really, really, really dismal matchups in the meta. Eraserhead absolutely ruins his day. Any deck that's playing that new Blood Curdle card or whatever that can tap his character ruins his day. Any deck that can cancel his attacks, which there's plenty of in this format, ruins his day. Any deck that reduces a bunch of speed ruins his day. Any deck that debuilds ruins his day. Like, there's just so much stuff that messes with him that I just don't think he can really play effectively in the meta. That being said, he is like extremely powerful on one end of the spectrum, right? And so I think with work, he can get there, right? I mean, obviously he can. People do get there with him. But I just think he's a lot of work to get there, which is why he's in the C tier. All right. New Bird Boy. I am going to double check this text. Alright, so the new one is a 6-hander with 27 life. Enhance once per turn. Discard a card from your pool. Add one ally card from your discard pile to your pool. Playable while committed. That's pretty good because you can slap his action in there. And then you can commit him to ready 2 ally foundations that have not been readied this combat phase. Those abilities are okay. I don't really feel like there's enough ally foundations that can be abused with that commit ability right now for it to be very effective. But it's okay. The cool part is that he can slap Tokiomi's action, set 1 Tokiomi's action into the pool, and that's cool, but it doesn't do a ton, right? That's the issue with this character. I don't really feel like it does very much, right? Like, honestly, this guy could have been a 7-hander with 24 life, and I would still kind of feel the same way about him. He just doesn't do enough. Moving on. Kurashima, How the Mighty Have Fallen. Excuse me. As we all know, Kurashima got an errata. His ability to pick up a foundation off the board for +2 or -2 damage is now once per turn, and his build top card of deck ability is now once per turn your turn, right? So obviously he is no longer S tier, especially with the banning of coordinated effort. But he is still good. I think he's pretty good in the sideboard, actually. I think he's solid against certain characters as a sideboard option. Especially like throw decks in this meta, because you can play under Void, the new card that Ochako got, the 1-diff that sets throws to 2 damage and then uses ability to -2, making throws 0 damage. And that's really, really good against those decks. So he might be actually a really good sideboard option for like Void decks. But as a main deck character, He's fine. He can get there. He still does what he did before, right? He's not a 9-hander anymore, but he is still a 7-hander with 29 life, right? That gets to build once per round of turns, right? Like, he can still do stuff. It's just he's a lot slower now, so he's going to be a lot more work. But he's okay. He's fine. Todoroki 1 dot. Todoroki 1 dot is really cool. I've always thought Todoroki 1 dot was a cool character. He boosts a lot of damage, and under the water symbol, that's especially good because he has a ton of throws to use in the water symbol. And then he can cancel and enhance once per turn by committing and milling. That ability, it was always extremely good. His issue is that his abilities are not always relevant against what he's sitting across from. So that kind of sucks. And he's very, very squishy. Granted, water did get a ton of good defensive options for all the throws that are going to be in the meta, but still being a 7-hander that's defensive and wants to play kind of a slower game in general, like he does, is going to be a bit scary in this meta. Moving on to 6-hander Present Mike. You can commit him to remove the top card of the rival's deck from the game. If it is not an attack, you ready him. So he can potentially mill, 4 or 5 cards straight into the remove from game pile. So that's pretty good. And then he can enhance for a speed for every 3 cards in the rival's removed from game pile. Max 4, playable while committed. That ability is also really good. It's just kind of free, and it gets better as the game goes on, right? I think this is probably the only mill out character that can probably get there, and it's because he doesn't have to mill people out. His speed ability is really, really good, and he can mill people out very effectively because he straight removes cards as opposed to discards them from the top of the deck. So he just makes it that much faster. That being said, I do think he's a bit slow. But we'll see in the coming days what and in the upcoming events what really happens with him. But for now, I put him in the C tier. I think he's a lot of work. Sorry. Alright. Ochako 3 dot. This is tough for me. I could put her in the B tier. She's a 6-hander with 25 life, which really sucks. Being that low really sucks. I think she could have been 27 life and it would have been fine. And she says, response after the combat phase begins, either player's combat phase, you get to reveal your momentum to both players and then add a high or charge attack revealed this way to your hand. That ability is extremely good. It makes her essentially an 8-hander as long as she has momentum, which it's not hard to get momentum in this character under the symbols that she has. And then she can respond after an attack is blocked, draw a card, discard a card, and your next check to play an attack gets +1. Filter, and she gets to make her checks easier. All around, just a really solid character. Her big issue is she doesn't really have an ability on her face that forces momentum in, so she's a bit slower than the other. She's quite a bit slower than the other Ochakos are. That being said, she is still really good, and I think with a good amount of work, you can get there with her. I think she's pretty good. And now I need to look this character up because I don't actually remember his name. Sorry, MHA fans. Shinso. First form, you get to name one of the attack zones. and then attacks of the that match the zone get 2 speed for the rest of the combat phase. That's good. It just means you kind of need to play a one zone spam deck, right? For the most part, which giving them all +2 speed is really good, but it also does kind of make your deck predictable, so that kind of sucks. But I mean, it's fine. And then respond once per turn. After your rival's attack resolves, you get to reveal a random card in their hand, and they must play it as their next form or discard it. That ability is really, really good. The one problem with it is, if it hits an attack on when they're intending to play an attack anyway, it doesn't really do anything, right? Like, that's that's a big issue, I think, with that. All in all, I think he's fine. I just think he requires a lot of work, and he's going to be very squishy in symbols that don't have that much defense against throws. They have some, but not a ton. Yeah, that's my opinion on him. Ida is okay. He's fine. His abilities are all generically good. They're basically just the reverse of Ingenium, but whereas Ingenium boosts... mostly affects his own stuff, Ida affects a lot of the opponent's stuff because he commits cards on the opponent's board. He increases speed. Like, and Ida is just a lot better. So, enough said. I think he does require a lot of work, though. Being a natural 6-hander, with the abilities that he has. But, that being said, I think he's really good. He just needs a lot of work to be able to get there. Alright, and next up, we have Mina. Mina 1-dot is really cool. You can enhance to give your attack 1 speed, and if it deals damage, you heal 1. A little bit of healing in a 7-hander doesn't hurt. Sorry. So that's good. And then once per turn on your turn, you can discard a card, and after you check a card, you may play it as your next form this turn. No check necessary. I mean, it's just slot machine, right? Sometimes she rolls extremely high, and she feels like the most S-tier of S-tier characters, right? And then sometimes she rolls super, super low. And for that reason, I think she's in C tier. With a lot of work and a lot of luck, I think you can get there with her. Absolutely. But, it's just tough. So, there it is. Alright, plant girl whose name is escaping me. Let's find her real quick. Ibarra. She can give an attack -1 damage, and then the next attack will get 3 damage. So she plays throws pretty well, and especially since she reduces damage on her own attack, which is busted. Her attack and Faith Shield, both of her support cards are crazy, right? So, and she plays them better than any other character. So those are really, really good. And that's really, really good about her. And I could be wrong. She could be up in the B, maybe even the A tier. I'm just not sure about her. And then she can say once per turn your next low attack ignores progressive difficulty. That ability is also really good. My main issue with her is that she's just a very squishy 7-hander that wants to be aggressive, and I think with the cards she has access to, she's a little bit slow on that aggression in this meta. So, but that being said, she can get there. She can get there. And I could be wrong. She could be a bit better than I'm thinking. All right. Bakugo 1 dot. Bakugo 1 dot is really cool. He's got a really hilariously greedy build, playing double front beatdown, and that's really sweet. Discarding cards from the pool is of course really good, and then boosting damage is always good as well. His issue is that just like he has serious six-hander syndrome, right? And the greedy deck is super greedy, right? Like it's tough to play him no matter what angle you play him from. That being said, with a lot of hard work and dedication and some luck, you can get there with him. So, in the C tier. All right, moving on to our B tier. We have, starting things off, Dobby. Dobby is interesting. So once per game, he can remove 10 foundations from his own discard pile. The next attack is going to get 8 damage and throw, unless your rival destroys all of the ready foundation to cancel the ability. That is a really scary blowout ability, because you're going to obviously save it 9 times out of 10 for a time when if you use this ability, they're dead, or their whole board, or at least most of their board, is gone, right? And that puts your opponent in a real tough bind, right? It's a really scary ability. And then his other 2 abilities are fine. They're just free stat boosts. I just wish they weren't first enhance, right? I wish there was another way that you could limit them, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. I just don't like that they're both first enhance. I wish it had just been a stat boost and something else, or just one good stat boost, one that was better than these 2, right? That being said, he's a perfectly fine character, and he plays pretty well. I just think there are other characters that are kind of doing what he wants to do a little better and a little more consistently. All right. Moving on. Denki. Denki is, of course, the meme bro of the meta. Denki, he's fine. He's fine. He's just a really aggressive 7-hander that can generate a bunch of momentum once per turn and can tap foundations on the opponent's board. I mean, his abilities are really, really good, right? It's just if he doesn't get there, he doesn't get there. And I think out of all of the aggro decks that are good, I think he's probably the weakest out of all of them. And so that's why I put him in the B tier. Momo, outside of Nathan's hands, is B tier. In Nathan's hands, it's S tier. But she's B tier. Her abilities are fine. She's a pretty decent character, and she got some good new support in set 2. Her issue is just kind of the same thing that it's always been. She's a bit slow, right? And that's and requires a lot of setup. And also she's a tough character to play for multiple rounds, right? She's a very big brain character to play for multiple rounds. So for that reason I put her in the B. Froppy, yet again, how the mighty have fallen. Froppy took a big hit in set 2, and I think it's gonna be real tough for her to recover from it. So obviously card pool stuffing got a lot better, which really sucks for her. There are a couple of different characters in the meta that just like hose her, right? And then on top of that, weights. Regardless of the first ability, the second ability on weights just kind of fucks Froppy over. Being able to just say this card cannot clear from the pool, I think is just incredibly detrimental to Froppy. there's a lot holding her back. That being said, she's still really good, right? She still does what she did before, right? And again, and in all the other matchups where the people aren't playing those cards, she's still the same character she was before, right? Like, I could be slightly wrong on her, but she definitely got worse in set 2 because of all the counters. So, for now, I'm putting her in the B tier. All right, Mineta 1. Mineta 1 is fine. Mineta 1 got several new card pool stuffing cards, and I think he's one of the actual card pool stuffing characters that actually plays that support really, really well. That being said, he's still got 6-hander problems. He still needs to see a lot more attacks in a turn than is reasonable for him to see to be able to really go off really super well with him. But can he get there with some work? Yeah, absolutely. I think he's pretty solid. Moving on to Fourth Kind. Fourth Kind is potentially a lot better than I'm rating him here. He's able to loop his attacks when he blocks with them back into his hand. So he can loop breaker blocks around under certain symbols that he has. And he can also loop around stuff that, like, burns the opponent, makes them discard cards, and different stuff like that. That's extremely good in him. And on top of that, he just gives free stats and plays a card as the 4th card for free. And once per game, he can just tap 4 foundations on the opponent's board. Like, that's really good. And he's a beefy 5-hander. So, he could be better than I'm thinking. But for right now, he is like a somewhat real 5-hander. And he does, under most of his symbols, I think he struggles to find good, consistent ways to kill people. So for now, I'm putting him in the B tier, and we'll see how he shakes out as events happen. All right. And moving on to Snipe. Snipe's cool. Response after the combat phase begins. After your rival's combat phase begins, you get to ready a foundation. So a little bit of extra defense with that. And you can enhance on your attack to discard the top card of the rival's deck. And if the card was an attack, you burn the opponent for 2. That ability is really cool. And it does not mention, unlike other cards, that it can't kill the opponent with this ability. So he can kill people with that ability, which is really, really good. And then if your ranged attack is completely blocked, your rival loses a health. Again, can kill people, right? Like, he just forces a lot of damage through, right? His issue is, I just don't really think he plays his symbols amazingly well. That being said, I think you can make him work. He's just going to require a little bit of work. But I do think he's cool, and he might be a little better than I think he is. All right. Ochako 2 in the B tier. This character has gotten a lot of tops. This character is really good. Potentially could bump her up to A tier. I think the big issue with her is that she's a bit slow. For the upcoming meta. Set 1 meta was just the right speed for her to thrive, but I think in set 2, she's going to be a little bit too slow. But otherwise, I mean, she's still the same Ochako she was. She got some new support that's really good in her. So, I mean, she's still a solid pick, right? Ojiro. Ojiro just he's a good character, but there are just other characters that kind of do what he wants to do, just better than him, right? The only thing that he does better than most other characters is flips a ton of cards, except for one character. One character flips better than him. And he's got some serious 6-hander problems. That being said, with some work, he can get there. Midnight. She's so cool. Midnight is so cool. And her abilities are great. Her issue is she is so foundation starved. You have to build her into Mega Deadlock to make her really effective. And I think it's a struggle in a competitive environment to really do well with her. That being said, her abilities are extremely good. She can certainly get there. It's just going to be a lot of work. Sero. This guy should have had a little more health. I think he could have been 28 health and it would have been fine. Being able to tap foundations on the opponent's board on their turn is extremely powerful. So that ability is really good. And his other ability makes him not a six-hander. So, I mean, like, his abilities are really solid. I just think he requires a little bit too much setup. And he's slightly foundation starved. But, I mean, he is pretty solid. So I put him in the B tier for now. Sero 1 dot. Sero 1 dot. He's good. His problem is I mean, just he has six-hander syndrome, right? He is very six-hand size, and doesn't really do much to kind of circumvent that. His once per game ability is incredibly powerful, and like he plays tape better than every other character in the game, or tape swing better than every other character in the game. So that in itself makes him really, really good, and he can feel extremely S tier at times. But because he has super six-hander syndrome, I think that just holds him back a bit. So B tier. Eraserhead. Eraserhead is a B tier character with an S tier character's text. At any point in time, Eraserhead could just become crazy out of nowhere. His abilities are extremely good. The issue with him right now is that his abilities are not in a meta where they matter. All he really does is boost speed, and he hits a couple of characters really, really well. That are being played with the action, right? But not enough that I think it matters, especially in a meta where he has to play through all the throws, right? That being said, at any point, Eraserhead could just become nuts and ban-worthy. But for now, I think he's B tier. Mina 2 dot, I think is the character. I think she's potentially A tier. I think she's the character that plays the actual full on, like, my strategy is card pool stuffing. I think she is the character that plays that strategy the best. I think she plays frog lashing, or whatever it's called, the DLC Froppy attack. I think she plays that card better than every other character. Obviously, she plays her ultra rare extremely well. I think her flash attack is extremely good. I think she plays Sero's card really well. Sticky Balls obviously is really good in hers. And she also plays throws extremely well and forces burn damage through. And can like stuff her own pool and make it ignore progressive, and she fights Mineta like 2 dot like crazy. She's really good against Mineta 2 dot, which is going to be extremely relevant in this meta, I think. So all around, I think Mina 2 is really good, potentially A tier. All right, moving on to our A tier characters. We have Endeavor. Endeavor's abilities are just solid, right? All of his support is really, really good. He boosts a truckload of damage, and he can grab attacks, right? Those abilities are really good, and, I mean, he's got 30 health as a six-hander. Like, he's just solid. He's an all-around super solid character, and there isn't really much wrong with him. Deku 2 dot. Deku 2 dot is actually crazy. Deku 2 dot is a almost fair version of Cassandra. Deku 2 dot is one of the characters that I think could potentially be up in that S tier. I think Deku 2 dot is really, really good. He plays several cards in his own kit and outside of his own kit extremely well. Like, Tetsu Fist is nuts in this character. And being able to just build foundations for free once per turn is really, really good. Tokiomi. Tokiomi is, I mean, he's really... as much as I don't think this character is super good, I can't fight the logic of how well he does, right? He does pretty well. He has a solid showing, and lots of people like to play him. And he just gets better in set 2. So I think Tokiomi is in the A tier. Shoji, this is a real ass deck. This is going to be a really, really strong throw deck. And he's going to be able to heal so much. Like, I'm not even sure how you kill him, right? He's just really solid. Being able to search stuff and be a 7-hander is really, really good. His boosting damage ability is really good, given that he has so many throws. And on top of that, he's an 8-hander if he goes second. Like, that's nuts. So in the A tier he is. Bakugo. This is probably the best glass cannon deck. Second best glass cannon deck in the format, in my opinion. This deck is crazy. He flips a ton of cards on the opponent's board. He generates a truckload of momentum extremely quickly, and he boosts a ton of damage with his abilities. He's just all around it a really, really solid glass cannon character. Gran Torino. This guy is potentially S tier. And you know what? In fact, I actually think he is S tier. We'll talk about him later. I'm changing my mind on him. Jiro. Jiro's really solid. Again, I think she's a more consistent Tokiomi. The issue with Tokiomi is that he has to see these massive blowout hands, and Jiro can kind of just sit there for a little bit because she's a little thicker and has access to some more defensive cards than Tokiomi has. And she can set up her turn a bit better. Plus, on top of that, she's setting up her checks. She's boosting tons of speed on top of the damage. Tokiomi just boosts a lot of damage, but she boosts speed too, which is really, really good. So, Jiro's just really solid. Unless we're talking webcam. In webcam, I think she drops a tier because of the webcam erratas. That being said, she's still really good. She still does the things that she does. It's just giving your opponents information is... it really sucks. All Might 2. All Might 2 draws a ton of cards and boosts a bunch of stats. I mean, what more can be said? He does what he does very well, and he hits like a truck, and he sees a lot of cards. And I think he just gets better at what he does in set 2. Sato. Obviously, Sato has a bit of a showing right now, which is why he's in the A tier. He plays throws very well. He just plays every kit very effectively, and being able to filter out cards and give stun is very solid. He's just super solid. So, Shigaraki just gets better with set 2. He has more options to blow up foundations. No new options that I'm recalling to trigger his burn ability, to forcefully trigger his burn ability, but he has a ton of new foundation destruction stuff and a lot of good support that came in under all of his symbols. So Shigaraki, I think, is A tier right now. Kamui Woods, the water symbol just got better, right? The water symbol is freaking crazy. And so Kamui, for that reason, is A tier, right? Like, his air symbol is also really, really good, and his earth symbol. Like, all of his symbols are extremely powerful. He's probably One of the strongest, if not the strongest, pure defense characters in the game. All right, Toru. I know a lot. I know many of you probably know that I am on the Toru hype train. I think Toru as a mainboard character is a sleeper character that no one's ready for. I mean, me personally, I played her in the first license exam, and I went 6-3 with her. Like, that's really good for a showing with this character. She can give flash once per turn, either player's turn, and +2 or -2 speed to an attack. That ability's nuts. That ability just makes Froppy impossible to play against her. That ability shuts off lots of 5-handers game plans. It shuts off tons of really, really good stuff. Her biggest issue is she's got a terrible matchup against her Chaco 1 and the All Mights, the 2 All Mights. But everything else in the meta, I mean, she ruins Bird Boy's day. Bird Boy can't really play the game against her very well. Jiro struggles a lot. There's just a lot of characters that struggle against this character, and very few that don't, right? And on top of that, she gets to blow up to bounce foundations to the board. So basically, every 5-hander in the game can't really play the game against her. So that's Toru. May's crazy. May just gets her hand size just increases progressively every single turn, and eventually she gets to a point where she can't not be a 9-hander because she draws so many cards under her symbols that it's going to be physically impossible for her to not have at least one attack in her hand at all times, right? May is an extremely good character. She boosts a truckload of damage and just draws a ton of cards for being a 28 life character. Potentially a character that could jump up to that S tier range. Kurogiri just absolutely demolishes lots of characters in this meta. That being said, Kurogiri could be a little worse, actually, than I think he is, just because he's so squishy. But Kurogiri obviously had a good showing at 1 or 2 events. And I think his new foundation just makes him that much more better. Kurogiri is a real good character. Tuga. Throga is obviously a real deck. That deck is very, very good. It's just an aggressive throw deck, which is obviously really, really strong. She heals. She's just all around a solid character. Stain. Stain is extremely rude. He has access to the new Todoroki card that puts both players to 5 foundations. He has his foundation that can stop people from building specific cards. He reduces checks. Like, he's really good at preventing the opponent from building a ton of foundations, which is crazy. And just being able to shut off an attack at random is good. And obviously burning the opponent is always good. So just all around, Stain's just a really solid character. Tetsu. This guy's crazy. Potentially S tier. He's really good. Being able to just discard a card to put 4 damage on something, especially the things he has access to, lots of throws and his own attack, is just crazy good. And then if he has no cards in his hand, once per turn, he can just reduce an attack to 1 damage, and then when he takes that 1 damage, he gets to grab a block back to his hand, block with that, and then if he takes damage again, he can grab another block. Like Tetsu is going to be really good this format, and I think he's going to have an extremely strong showing. All right, and moving on to our S tier, we're going to start over here with Gran Torino. So obviously I moved him up from the A tier. being able to discard a card on the opponent's turn is really, really good, obviously. But the fact that this man is a banned card on his face is ridiculously good. He has coordinated effort on his face. That's insane. That's insane. Like, coordinated effort was banned for a reason, and I don't think printing this character was a good idea. They should have changed the way this character worked, or increased the cost of in order for him to do what he does. He's really, really good, and I think he should probably be on a watch list because he could potentially be a problem. Ida 3-dot, the best of the Idas. This guy's crazy. His ability to ready a foundation, a spam foundation, is whatever, right? That's fine. The real thing is that he generates momentum every time an EX ability is used. That is crazy. I have watched an Ida go in one turn from 0 momentum to 6 momentum, and then and then drop it all and murder somebody out of nowhere. And that being said, even outside of that, he can just never not trigger his EX abilities. And there's a ton of good EX cards that he has access to. I think he's potentially a problem, right? So I think he should probably be on a watch list. All right. All Might 3-dot. This guy's just extremely overstated. I think he's a bit too overstated for what he does, because he's basically just an 8-hander all the time, right? And he boosts a bunch of free stats on the cards he has access to. Generally, he's playing Punch Planet, which is a really good package that just got better, right? He's a very, very scary character to sit across the table from, and I think he should be on a watch list just because he's so overstated. Todoroki 2-dots. This character's crazy good. I think he probably plays the most consistent game of UFS out of every character that we have access to in My Hero Academia. He is extremely powerful. Once per turn, he can give 2 speed, 2 damage. Really solid ability. Once per turn, he can give a ranged attack stun 2. Again, really solid ability. And once per turn, either player's turn, he can make both players add a card from their momentum to their hand, making him a pseudo 8-hander. He has access to a bunch of cards that can discard the opponent's momentum so that they can't add a card to their hand, right? He just plays extremely consistent UFS to the point where I think it's almost a problem. I'm not quite sure. He may not be as good as I think he is, but I think he's potentially a problem and should probably be on some sort of watch list in case he gets out of control. Moving on. Obviously, many of you know this is my favorite character in the format. Mechanically, I hate him in the show, but mechanically, I love what he does. He's crazy good. Mineta is insane. Being able to debuild the opponent on your turn for free once per turn into their pool is really good, and then being able to stuff their pool on their turn is also really good. Obviously, he has access to crazy good throw packages under his evil and his water symbol. Has access to really, really solid foundation destruction under his water, under his evil and his death symbol. And he has access to probably the best, one of the best, if not the best, between him and Kamui Woods, defensive game plans in the format right now. Under his water symbol. He's crazy, crazy good. And as much as I love him, he probably should be on a watch list in case he gets out of control. That being said, he's really, really good. Cementos. Cementos fundamentally breaks the game in half. Even if he doesn't have as good a showing as I think he's probably going to. I think he should probably be on a watch list and get banned. Cementos can be a 10-hander if he wants to be, right? And he boosts a ton of damage under symbols that have access to a bunch of throws. Cementos is an extremely scary character, and there's not a ton of characters that fight him very well, but the ones that do, I will say, the ones that do absolutely ruin his day. Like, Toru, Mineta, they both just as examples, both those characters absolutely ruin Cementos' day. But that being said, he's still he's still an extremely good character that fundamentally breaks what UFS wants to do. And breaks the balance of the game, I think. So, in the S tier he is. And we'll finish things out. This, in my opinion, is the best character in the format. I said it, and I mean it. Ochako 1 dot is a problem and needs to be banned. I'm sorry, Levi. I get you love this character, but I think she's a problem. I think she's a huge problem. The character has very few, if no, bad matchups, right? Other than like Bird Boy, right? And that's only if she doesn't see the aggro, right? If she sees it, she can just murder him out of nowhere. She plays an extremely consistent game that puts your opponent in constant bad positions. She gets to loop attacks like nobody's business. She basically always has a momentum. The character's just a bit out of control, and I think she plays the strongest UFS in the game right now. And should be on a watch list and potentially get banned. All right. Well, there you have it, guys. This is my tier list. Thanks for watching. I know it was a long one. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all later. Bye.